Hi everyone, my name is Francesco Zurlo, and today with Giulio Ceppi we will show you our way to interpret the idea of mobility in the next few years, thanks to the work that Giulio Ceppi did in a course of our design school, and specifically in the Integrated Product Design School course, the Master of Science, with the students of our Master of Science, and exploring the possibilities for what Giulio called the Autofficina of the future. So I mean the factory for car repair and car manufacturing of the future. Giulio, maybe you can tell something more about the contents of this course, and so the results coming from the vision of the students. And even, your course is related to the concept design, advanced design, so the possibility to find new opportunities, observing and emphasizing let's say weak signals coming from the present. I really appreciated your presentation because you put some references to materials, to new emerging technologies, and so on, starting from the present, but considering the technology readiness level of some technology. So I mean, some hints, some intuitions related to emerging materials, emerging technologies. So, but the floor is yours. So let's start with this presentation, and I will come to converse with you about the results of our students.
Okay, thank you, Francesco, and let's say thank you, Mr. or Lord Forster, because he gave us the opportunity to think about 2086. That is not a joke to imagine in 60 years what will be the future of car. So we started from some thoughts and insights about the special character of the history of Italian design applied in the car field, because what we realize, it's something quite strange, that also as a parallel in furniture, in fashion, but let's say from the 50s, after the Second World War, the Italian car designer were starting already to work all over the world for the major car producer of that time. So here you have just some example, but you see Italian designer like Franco Scaglione were designing for Aston Martin, were designing for Jaguar, or some other like Michelotto for Triumph. This is not so banal because, let's say, after the Second World War, the climate was, let's say, not so open, not so easy for Italian people to design for other industries, no? But let's say these people, the so-called carrozzieri, no? It's a strange Italian particularity because we have been much more global and international than what we could imagine. And this is part of our heritage, no? Because if you look ahead in this history, for example, it's also not banal that some Italian designer going to the 70s, going to the 80s, have been the lead of big car companies like Mercedes, for example, that has been led by Bruno Sacco for more than 15, 20 years, or let's say more recently, Walter da Silva has been working, we know, for Seat, for Volkswagen, then for Audi. So it's interesting, and also from the opposite side, as some, for example, American people like Chris Bangle made their, let's say, experience in Italy, and then they become responsible, for example, for BMW. No? So it's very interesting to look as this Italian approach to car design at something very open to international influence, to a glocal kind of intent in the role of design. So not just Italian designer for Italian company, no? But something that since the 50s really blended and mixed different countries, different sensibilities, and also, and maybe then you can make some comment on this, has, and this is also not banal, the more classical for us designer in terms of product design and interior design or architectural design, so like Gio Ponti or Bellini, tried or somehow made some interesting provocation or attempts to design car, making a sort of let's say outbounding into a field like the car design that normally is quite self-related. It's quite close to external influence, no? So all this kind of hybridation somehow are kind of characteristics that are part of our heritage and our DNA when we look at the history of Italian, or let's say better, Italic car design, no?
Yeah, Giulio, maybe you forgot to put the Cisalpina 202, no? So a fantastic car, and you know the exhibit in 1952, curated by Philip Johnson. No? He chose this car by Pininfarina, no? Designed by Pininfarina, and you know, with this car, you could understand the difference with the other approaches, less oriented to the future. No? So thanks to the design, no, of this car, so you can understand, you could understand, so what was the vision about this industry coming from the car sector in Italy. No? So and you understood even the quality of this metal makers, no? So because they were metal makers, you know, so
Yeah.
and that was very, very interesting. You know that Arthur Drexler, who was the curator with Philip Johnson of this exhibit, and then later on for 35 years the director of the Museum of Modern Art of New York, he coined the idea of the sculptures in movement, just taking inspiration from the car of Philip Johnson. Oh, sorry, Pininfarina. No, so that's very, very interesting. It's good. It's also a way to express the Italic genius. No, so and even in this this picture about the Kara Sutra, no, of Bellini, that's very interesting because you know. We used to say that design is a way to find meanings for technology. You know, and the cars are expression of technology, but he found a new meaning, transforming car not just as means for mobility, but means for freedom. No, interpreting the requests coming from young generations. You know, so and maybe even the Italic way of interpreting artifacts is related to this looking for meanings, no?
Yeah. What you're saying, Francesco, is very interesting because some times ago I had an interview with the Zagato owner. He's really one of the last metal makers, as you said, no? And he said something very interesting, speaking about his father, that was the founder of the company. He said, you know, that when American companies and also other country companies were starting to make big numbers, they're starting to invest. Take Ford, no, as an example, producing millions of cars a year. We instead were taken by designing a single car for a single person, for a single family, going to Portofino to buy an ice cream and coming back with a special car. So we were out of the big industrial processes, but we were very close to understanding the behavior, the desire, the freedom, or the limits related to people. No, I believe this was our luckiness and also maybe our limit, no, because we never had the big companies, and honestly, when we think something big in car in Italy, we necessarily don't think something very qualitative in terms of design, no. But we still have some small companies, because if we think about Ferrari or Lamborghini, they are not significant in terms of numbers, no, but they are still very close to customization, to making things for special people. Okay, these are wealthy people. But at the beginning, if you see these cars, no, and also, for example, just to go to another level, all the contamination with the fashion dimension. This is also something interesting, no, because we are old enough, Francesco, to remember the first application of Alcantara or special textile from Zegna into the interior design, and special, let's say, brand edition partnering fashion company and, let's say, car producers. No, also if this then has been applied also by Germans or by maybe Asian. No, we have an example here of Fiat 500 partnering with Gucci, that now is not an Italian company anymore. So again, this is a big mix-up and a big exchange of different perspective, different know-how, different culture in terms of design. No? But we put this suggestion at the beginning of our workshop to show the student that they don't have to design a car, but they have to imagine how people and why they should buy a car in 60 years from now, more or less, no? Because it's difficult to imagine how the car will really be. But what we can try to imagine is how people will live and why they should still buy a car, no? So, because technically we know the future is very open, but we always have to put people at the center. And this was the main, let's say, feature and one of the main characteristics in the Italic approach to car design. No? And so we asked the student to continue somehow this kind of hybridization and melting and crossover of influences, not to consider the car, as you said, just a transportation system, but something much more, no? Because we can move in different way, we know, no, but the car will be still part of our future if we'll be able to match, to be part of our lifestyle, because otherwise will be just a car, and the numbers, I believe, also will be less relevant in future, no?
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And, it's we can spend, some of the Italic, let's say, characteristics, So the fact that we love the interior design, so we love to furnish, interior life, So and then with this hybridation you are proposing, you can find this link with other sectors. I totally agree with you that you can cross these sectors, and you find even some very important furniture brands, So in the interior of this.
Yeah, here we have Poltrona Frau or maybe Alessi, that is
Poltrona Frau,
paradox, no?
And it's that sometimes. I knew once I had the opportunity to interact with some managers coming from Fiat, and they did market research, understanding that people choose cars not just for the external shape or specific features of the cars, but because they want to feel like at home. So with an internal part, so very curated with something good, not to see, to touch, to smell, and so on. So the interior design of cars is the reason why for buying. So one of the first, let's say, trigger, for the choice of a car.
Absolutely. Yes, this is the reason, for example, why we ask the student at the end to imagine a sort of very small atelier, so a space which is 10 meter for 5 meter for 10 meter high. So let's say a room where you can imagine in the future that some people living in 2086 and they define 7, let's say, future profession, because we started from the working practice, from the jobs of people in 2086, to imagine these people asking italic, let's say, car designer to design and produce and customize its own car for their special needs, no? Because if you are, and then we take some example, a bioproducer nutritionist, which is a future profession between being a producer of food and being a doctor, being a nutritionist, you need a special car to do your job, no? So we imagine this can be a strong reason still to ask for a car in 60 years, because you need something special, like it was the beginning of the carrozzieri when they were designing maybe for wealthy people or special people, a very dedicated car that then become an icon and become something very famous, but was for few people with a very special profile and a very special, let's say, desire slash need, no? Because sometimes it's difficult. So we ask the student first to define the profession, so to define the attitude, the psychology, the need of these people, and then to design this, let's say, container, because at the end, this is also a movable office. So, and it's full of, as you said, technology able to personalize and customize the design of the car using a few space. We don't imagine anymore come si dice, catena di montaggio, a big factory with hundreds of workers, but we imagine a very small space where you can also outsource and collect pieces made by different producers. And in Italy, we still have an incredible number of small, not either so small companies making components for all over the world, no? So we have people like Pirelli, Brembo, Poggi Polini that are very good producer of special components. They don't make cars, but they do the top of, let's say, accessories and finishing, leather, color. So we have this kind of industry today in Italy, no? So I asked the student to pick among these technologies, and then to imagine, for example, let's start from this first example, no? Who is the life poet? The life poet is a kind of, let's say, augmentation of what should be today a blogger or an influencer, but is more authentic, no? Say, like a poet, no? You expect the poet not to be lying, no? You use poetry to speak about universal values in a very sensible way. So they imagine a kind of digital, let's say, influencer, but not corrupted by money, no? As we know they are a little today, honestly, but very authentic, no? But he's going around with his own car in order to collect sensibilities, sensorial stimuli, information. We also ask always for a portrait of this person. Sometimes the age, the genre is not important, no? But it's more the attitude, the psychological mood of these characters, no? Of these future workers. And then we ask to design the environment. For example, you see there is always a small office where the carrozziere is living, but some of these spaces you will see they become form of artificial intelligence. So not necessarily there is a physical person. This can be also a kind of automatized and robotized and very smart environment that you deliver and that is making the car, and maybe the client goes in, but sometimes there is still a one-to-one relationship because the car maker physically travel. Sometimes maybe there is an avatar or there is just the environment that is sent in place according to the need of the client and also to his economical possibilities, no? You see, then there is some accessories and some technologies that has been selected by students. Obviously, we are speaking in 60 years, so it's not so easy to really imagine, no? But for example, this is a short of third eye, you know, like the car producer has the capability to move around the space and to control the production, but also to talk to the client that sometimes is getting into this space in order to see the advance of the job, no? Because we ask the students also to imagine a timeline and different steps, maybe the concept, maybe the production, maybe the deliver, because there is a certain, let's say, process that has to be imagined and designed. No? It's not just the space, but is what happened into the state, the kind of relationship. Then they pick up some materials that, for example, in this case, you see there are some technological and more high-tech material like this honeycomb-based material like the bean core, but also still some very emotional and rich supernatural material like a mahogany wood, no? So he's a poet, no? So he need the differences, and then maybe in the middle you see an aerogel, but then these materials are used to design the environment. This environment is particularly fluid, no? It's particularly open. You say this is the office of the car designer and the space for his client with this kind of third eye, which is a, let's say, virtual presence, no? That should help in interaction between the client and the producer, because again, it's not necessarily always here. Then there is the place of production of the car that mainly is based on, let's say, addictional printing system, no, in order to save space and to be able to print and to use different materials. And then obviously you go into all the production steps. And then, if I'm not wrong, in this case, all, for example, the storage is under the floor. So there are a lot of now we have to go quickly, no? So maybe I don't know if you want to comment this or we go in another example to have maybe
maybe
some,
we can discuss about this example because it's very interesting. So first of all, it's very difficult to figure out the future if the future is so far, no? So 60 years from now, it's very far from us, from our experience, no? So you must design the future, of course, no? So this is, let's say, the goal of every designer, no? So to anticipate, to critically anticipate the future. And I really appreciated your approach because you start from the professions, and if you think that the babies are being born now, we don't know which professions they will have in 60 years, you know. So and this is a very interesting attempt to define these new professions. And I appreciated even the fact that you leave the idea of, the means for mobility, focusing on the space where you can create the means for mobility or for maintaining, or, the interaction with the end users. And maybe you created this idea of platform to enable people to create with, local manufacturers, or, enabling designers, so your own solution. So I've found a gap because you have this fantastic, very visionary idea about the atelier, but the solution is like a traditional car. No? So, and this is because we have this kind of, let's say, a mental prison. No? So when we think about our needs, we used to associate just specific products, but not the experience, not the possibility to find other solutions. So, and but I think because of the fear, to face a future so far from us. So this is my personal interpretation of this first concept.
Yeah, but also this is something I didn't say, that the car, it's always a fake, in the sense that I asked them to work, as you said, on the process, on the environment, on the relationship. I said, don't design the car, because otherwise it's also, say, in 3 months time, it's also too much, no? So they took a car and they put a car in, but the only thing they do not design is the car. So it's always a fake what you see as a car, because otherwise this will be too much. Somebody tried to do this, no, but they didn't give relevance to this. Otherwise it becomes too complex, no. For example, you will see this example, this is more clear, no, because this is a profession in which they imagine that obviously you are a professionist of nutrition, of food, of taking care of people through food, so a kind of dietologist, but you are also responsible for delivering the specific food that people need for your care, for your indication, because no, it's important that you have a match and you give the trust and the certitude that what you say is also what you are really going to eat, no? So it's an agricultural related kind of profession and is a healthcare related kind of profession, no? So it's in between a doctor and a contadino, let's say, a countryman, no? So interesting, no? Half and half. And it's also based in Asia, because I also asked to imagine where this profession is taking place, no? Because it's a different mood, it's a different location. So you see, they design, again, a short, there is always a sort of cocoon at the center of the space that is where the car slowly grows, no? Sometimes it starts from an hologram, from a, let's say, unmaterial but three-dimensional design, and then the design, which is just a perceptual dimension, becomes tangible, no? So you see your car virtually, and then this virtuality slowly gets into something physical, no? And in this case, there are these robots, that these arms that are rotating in this very organic, in this very obviously soft and three-dimensional, you will see, space. And they use a lot of biomaterials, because they use algae, they use material coming from insects. So the car is very organic, no? And also probably, as you said, this means a continuous relationship, because if you have an organic car, it's not so durable as a traditional one, because you need to refill, you need to replace material, you need to work on the fact that it is not long lasting, but is imagined as something to be managed in time, no? So they have all these rotating and additional system. Obviously there are the growing of the plants and the material inside the atelier. So the atelier is a kind of winter house, no? It's a kind of big garden where technology produce the raw material. So a locavore approach somehow, no? So you see there is a lot of biological and greenery impact, no? And then you have these robotic arms that slowly are producing your car, no? So it's a biofactory somehow, no? With always the possibility from the designer to control the process and to have a relationship with the client. Okay, again, so don't look the car, because the car is just a mock-up, it's just taken. You have to look more the environment. We hope the result will be a little better than this, but this is just to show the dimension and the proportion, no? So again, this is very different from the other, but I believe is a very interesting metaphor, thinking that the car is something we know is going from metal to plastic, but it's still very oil-based and with the idea of a long-lasting product. Here, the idea is that it is organic, it is alive, so it's much more close to nature. So the relationship also with the producer is that you need a continuous maintenance and replacing of things as a living organism, no?
Yeah. I think that so I can take a couple of takeaways, no, from this presentation. The first one is about this idea of breaking the boundaries among disciplines, among fields of activities, of human activities. I mean, you put together health, you put together agriculture, something related to logistics, mobility, of course, and you cross, these different fields, so the needs coming from these different fields. And the second one is related to the idea of this living organism. The car as a living organism, and this kind of magical, let's say, atelier to create this living organism, so living entity. In this case, I think that you can start from some weak signals coming from the science of materials, because today, you have materials that grow up without, but they are not traditional living beings, but they grow up, So if you look some experiences, experiments, Tokujin Yoshioka, for instance, and also creating these armchairs thanks to some chemical reactions, or if you look at the the experiences showed by Paolo Antonelli in designing the Elastic Mind, the exhibit of more than 10 years ago, where they explore possibilities for these living materials. You can take some interesting, let's say, tips, about the future. What will be the future?
So, absolutely. This is instead a little more, let's say, brutal, because the leaf is intended as a, let's say, emergency guy, a profession in which when there is a trouble, you are sent there to try to, you are a problem solver, no? But maybe is a little inspired by Quentin Tarantino, the famous problem solver in what's the name of the movie? Okay, forget about this. In Pulp Fiction, when there is the specialist, so somebody that has
Wolf.
solve.
I remember the name is Wolf, from
exactly, is Wolf. Is the wolf of the future. So there is a trouble, you have to go there. So you are in between maybe a policeman, a politician, a negotiator, but you have to face something tough. So you see, the aesthetic is that you go in a place where there can be also some physical, let's say, complaint and a kind of heavy duty, let's say, situation, So it's less, let's say, intangible. It's very far from the life poet, This is a guy that has to manage something solid and something with a lot of environmental concern. So the aesthetic is much more, again, heavy duty, tough, and there are a lot of technologies that are based on safety, on let's say, protection. But for example, is very interesting that you will see there is again a strong integration of natural, let's say, material. No, for example, they invented this idea that there is a strelitzia, that becomes bioluminescent. So the capability, for example, of flower to generate leaves able then to be used to produce and make light, So tough doesn't mean artificial, Also nature can help in future with biotechnology, with DNA matching to create a supernatural material, So not necessarily oil-based or produced with polluting or contaminating technologies, as it is a little bit still today, So again, they use a lot of drones. There are some things that obviously are a little repeating, like the idea of holographic projection in order to visualize things before, or augmented reality. Obviously, that they know, general, our students, that in the future there will be much more possibility to visualize in one-to-one scale complex objects, and to manipulate it and slowly to transfer them with additional printing into something physical, So they are fascinated by this one-to-one relationship between the virtual and the real, no? And also the material you see are very parametric, no? So are material based on a very sophisticated control of nanotechnologies or biotechnologies. So the fact that you have very sophisticated performance by material that you can strictly control with sophisticated technologies, no? And obviously the environment again is there is a sort of library. I remember this is a library of different material. In all this project there is a lot of customization, lot of bespoke, a lot of personalization, and here you see, for example, the hybridation of these strelitzia, which are making luminescence with an environment which is a little bit more aggressive and let's say military driven. So it's quite curious, no? Because it's much more hard, but still with let's say it's a little Batman Batman driven kind of approach. Also the car looks, but again has not been designed. They took probably the Batmobile, no? So it's this kind of influence between mechanical and chemical, between something, so everything is a little dark with not so much light, but it's interesting kind of approach, more technical than the others, no? Because these people has a very performative goal to reach, no? Which is safety, which is defense, but we know that is not a world so far away from reality either, unfortunately, no?
And even in this case, let's say, that, you can create the future starting from the science fiction, no? So
Yeah.
what the science fiction is proposing to us, no? So you mention Batman, no? So, and this is like the Batman cave, no? So with, transparent technology, around you. And there is also another trend, so that's related to the biophilic design, no? So the possibility to integrate vegetables, green, no, within the living environments, in this case, mechanical atelier, or I don't know if it's mechanical is the right word, because it's something more organic than mechanical, no? So, and this idea of biophilic is also very strong with the use of this Clara strelitzia flower, no, bioluminescent. So the possibility to use flowers, but with a genetic change, so with some genetic transformation, in order to meet maybe the problems of the humans of future of the future, no? So, and but I have a question for you, because you say that this is a futuristic wolf, no? Mentioning Quentin Tarantino, no? But what about the problems of the future? So, which kind of problems the students they have found, no? So, thinking about this very far future.
Yeah, I'm doing this year also something similar, always not working 2086, just working at 2033, so 10 years, that is more than enough. And we did something that goes in the same direction. So imagine what will be, let's say, the weakness, the fragility, let's say the diversity in a close future for people that should have trouble in facing reality in 10 days, 10 years from now. And for example, many of the troubles of the future come from the climate change and the environmental issue, no? So the fact that you have to move because you can't live where you were used to live, the fact that you are scared going out because it's arriving a storm, or it's too hot, or it's too cold. So many of these fragilities in the future, that means troubles, will be based, for example, on the effect of climate change and the environmental trouble. Many of them, which is instead a little more scaring, will be based on, let's say, the massive presence of digital technologies. The fact that we are becoming too much addicted to stay in front of a PC or to living in a virtual reality, or we don't know if we have 15 avatars of ourselves, who we are really among all these avatars, if we become schizophrenic by our digital presence. So many of the trouble will also be produced more at the cognitive and psychological level by the, let's say, very horizontal presence of technology. No? So it's interesting that when we, or for example, this is another answer to your question, no? To the increase of difference in religious or cultural values. No, this profession is very interesting, no, because it's again a guide that has to manage an emergency. But this is clearly a, as the profession said, a cultural problem. It's not an environmental or, let's say, physical problem, but it's a problem of relation between local communities, between different cluster of people into a city. So you go there because you have to help these people to talk, no, to have a dialogue and to match together. So, for example, the brief of this profession and of the relevant consequence car was to be very chameleontic, no? So to be able to adapt the design of the car to the context, no? If you're going to meet, I don't know, a community in India, you need to look, let's say, more Indian, no? If you are going to the North Pole, you have to try to match. It's a question of mimicry, but also of mimesis, no? So you have to become part of the communities, also if you know that there are two communities, or maybe it's a local community fighting against the world or a very big political government, no? But it's interesting, this need to match local identity, no? So you will see the focus of the project is flexibility and the capability to design a car that is able to interact with the environment and to change and to cooperate somehow with people, no? Also, all the factory is based using this magnetic system in which everything is floating. You know, this is a technology already used in assembling chain in modern factories. So it's very sophisticated, but also very warm, no? Because compared, for example, to the previous one, here there is a lot of wood, there is a lot of light. The car is designed by these fibers and the projection of light on this fiber. So it's a kind of theatrical effect to make a three-dimensional volume, but using physical elements like fibers and then just projecting a light, no? So it's not the classical holographic system. And then, okay, you have again these robotic arm that are able to slowly produce your car. But you see, the topic is to make a car with technologies and material like maybe this is not so clear, but that are able to make the cars very adaptable. And still, you know, there are many attempts by BMW, no, remember the Gina, no, the car designed by Chris. So the idea also that car producers are working today, and also it's a very classical design exercise to make a car that is able to adapt to different situations, no, inside as well as outside, no, in terms of color, finishing. Also, maybe here is not so clear this.
Very interesting, even this. Let me know if I understood. So the possibility to adapt your cars depending on the context, you know? So Okay, so maybe changing the interior side, changing the external shape, depending on the context. And this is very interesting because, you know, today we live, the cities are parking lots, no? So full of cars, and they change the perception of the cities, no? Think about the possibility to integrate cars within the landscape of the cities, thanks to new technologies, maybe not existing yet, that can change the shape, that they can adapt the colors according, dealing, with the colors plan, of the cities. Not just a possibility, no?
Yeah. It's also, or imagine your car changing a lot by day or by night, or according again to the kind of people that you have to meet. No, it's a little kind of chameleontic concept. No, that I believe car industry, or maybe today this should be done according to the kind of user of the car. No, already we know that today we can personalize a lot about the seat position, the lighting, the control of all the interaction. And for example, still between male and female, there are big differences in the way they use the car, no? Or they want to, let's say, interact with the car, because all these cars obviously are imagined as self-driving cars, so nobody is driving the car anymore, no? So the way the car speaks to you and the way the car speaks to the environment become absolutely relevant, no? Then obviously the problem is to recognize your car, because I already have trouble today sometimes to remember which one is my car. I will have trouble in this in my future, being a little with a nano Alzheimer already, but this is my personal problem.
Giulio, the time is going over, I
Yeah,
think. So,
maybe we can put a final example if you want. I believe
yeah.
this is quite interesting. No, this is what they call, using a Japanese word, the umai moods provider. So it's a person that it's a kind of, let's say, doctor that use prostheses and artificial components to enhance our body. No, so it's all the the classical topic of cyborg, of adding, let's say, functionalities artificially to our body. No, so it's in this kind of adding prostheses, adding more sensorial possibilities to our body, no? So is in this kind of Blade Runner avatar mood, no? But the factory is very interesting because I believe the design it's very scenographic and very minimalistic, but very impacting, no? Because you see here the car is hidden by a cloth, so this is not the car, right? It's covered by a cloth, but this, for example, is many of the students, for example, design a special seat where the client can test the comfort of the car, the position, the interaction sequence. But this is particularly interesting because you see everything is based on electromagnetism. So the seat is floating and everything is movable, no? But it's a chair, let's say, without a structure, apparently, no? But the structure but is consisting of these pieces working by electromagnetism together, no? But is kind of magic chair where you can test the comfort of the car and the reaction of your body, because imagine this seat is full of sensor. And then this is, let's say, the place where you select, for example, all the finishing, the material. But it's interesting because I believe it's very minimalistic, no? It really looks like a doctor cabinet, no? Just some drawers and just this robot making a few things. But it's interesting because it seems a surgery camp, no? A surgery room. It doesn't look as a factory for what we intend today a factory to be, no? And here you see, for example, a moment in which the client works with the AI of the system. For example, in this case, there is no designer. So the designer is artificial intelligence, obviously controlled by the original designer, but there is no a people-to-people interaction. There is a people-to, let's say, intelligence, artificial intelligence interaction that maybe is caring, but it's also smart, because it means that you can sell your factories, your boxes around the world, no? Because it's the factory coming to you, it's not you going to the factory, no? This is the change also in terms of business model, no? And you can be everywhere, no? So you have to design the behavior of this room in order that the room can talk and dialogue with the client and fulfill all his her needs, no? But this is quite scenographic, let's say, no? But I believe interesting as an idea of factory of the future, because it's very minimalistic, no? But more close to the idea of a surgery and let's say hospital kind of environment, than not the factory with grease on the walls or mechanical things going around, no? And then the car goes up from the ceiling of the factory, and you see moves up, and then it's also able obviously to fly, no? As you know, the famous Pininfarina concept they made some years ago. So this is also quite scenographic, but quite provocative, I believe, no? Because it's really, it looks like a loft in New York of a very sophisticated kind of architect, no? And we know that our students are industrial design students; they are not interior design. So they've been forced to imagine the behavior of an environment and the object inside. But I believe some of these exercises are quite provocative and interesting.
Very sophisticated concept, and maybe you can refer to the Japanese culture, because of the animism, the possibility to provide soul to even inanimate matter, no? So in this case, you have this soul that grows up with the end customer, no? So with the end user, because you are building the mobility solution like a suite, no? You become like
a tailor,
a
absolutely.
tailor, yeah, in a way, let's say, sewing the suite around the person, around the user. No, that's very interesting. I have a final question for you, no? So because I think your students, they did a very good job. Let me say, using a very strong creativity, to interpret the 2086 scenario for mobility. I like to take reference to this sentence coming from William Gibson, is one of the masters of science fiction. And maybe you know this sentence, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. And so this is related to the methodology that you asked to follow for your students, because maybe the quality of the observation of the present is also the secret to propose disruptive scenarios like the ones that you showed to us. So could you tell something about the methodology you follow with your students? And just to close this presentation.
Yeah, you are absolutely right, because obviously 60 years from now is really science fiction. No? We know it's not easy to really predict what it could happen. Neither any car producer can do this, I imagine, no? But I believe it was very interesting for the student to have, let's say, this kind of brief, no? This kind of, let's say, freedom, but let's say with a clear idea that you are still helping people, so to do something that will be relevant for them, let's say, in the future. But where the future, as you said, is something that is still here today, because all these need, all this, let's say, vision, technically can be realized in a different way, and maybe all these projects can be different. But I believe the attitude, as you said, to look to the present in a way that is able to use your antenna, no, to focus on what will be next, is really fundamental for design. No, this is also the reason why we started showing the past, no, because many times the future is also related to big waves, no, to very long cycles. So we went to look for the anomalies and the peculiarities of the Italian design car story, history, to understand what will be the future. Because honestly speaking, we don't have so many car producers today. No, the big Italian companies are spread around, half American, half French. Who knows? Difficult to understand. As we said before, we have a lot of technical producer of components of car. So I believe as a designer, you have much more freedom and potential today, theoretically, to design a car, because you put things together, no? But you have to know the reason why. So the future is the reason why, and the past help you looking back to understand much better the direction you can take, you know. So it's connecting future and past that you design something relevant. So this is a little the message that I believe the student catch very well, no?
I agree with you, and you know, past is very important because you need to understand what is the genealogy of the artifacts that we are designing on today and for the future. No, so there is a critical path coming from the past. No, so and this is very important. And let me say that I understood that the students analyzed emerging technologies, they analyze emerging needs or maybe wishes coming from society, from the culture itself. And this is the right way to interpret creativity. You know, let me close this conversation with you with this sentence coming from Italo Calvino. No, Italo Calvino was used to say, "Creativity is like a jam. You need a solid slice of bread, no, to eat the jam. No? And this is what we have seen in your presentation. So thank you so much, Giulio.
No, thanks to you for your comments, Francesco. Maybe you appreciate it, and thank you very much to everybody.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you very much.
Bye.